Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
What happens when we die? What's it like on the other side? Can we communicate with those that have passed? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to delve into health, dying, death, and beyond is R. Craig Hogan. Craig is an acknowledged expert on the afterlife and afterlife communication, president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, co-founder of Seek Reality Online, and the author of 8 books about the afterlife and afterlife communication. His website, seekreality.com. Craigie, thank you so much for joining us again on Mission Evolution.
Gwilda, it's a delight to be here. I'm anxious to talk with you and your audience about what we know today about the life after this life.
And that's a topic, it's something we all face is the end of our lives, right?
Yeah, everybody faces it, and we can either look forward to it as a time when we know we're going to be graduating into a greater reality, or we can have fear and doubt and anxiety about it. There's no reason for anyone to fear the transition at the end of this life.
That's so good to know. Now, Craig, you have a PhD. What was your field of study?
My PhD is in business and focusing on business communication, so I'm helping people to make their communications clear and have an effect on other people. And I've carried that over into my work with the afterlife and afterlife communication. And so I'm now helping people to have afterlife communications, helping them to understand what's coming to them, and helping them to realize that there is a much greater reality, and there is no death, and there are no dead.
So how did you make that quantum leap from working in the business industry and business communication to dealing with the afterlife?
So, I was 52 years old, and things were going along fine, and I didn't have a belief in much of anything. And suddenly, psychics came into my life. I was meeting them every day, and they were telling me things that I had difficulty understanding at first. But then I came to realize when they were telling me things that they couldn't know to be true, that there must be something more to this. And so I had a psychic who told me, go home and take a deck of cards and put them on your one hand, and take one card at a time and put it on the palm of the other hand. And then if it feels like it's black or cold, then it's black. If it feels like it's warm, then it's red. And so I did that and made a couple of stacks of piles, and then I finally turned them over, and all of the black cards were black and all of the red cards were red except one. And so what that taught me was that I have psychic ability. And so then I started to learn how to remote view. I could sit in my office and I can view something thousands of miles away. And the reason that we can do that is because there is no distance, there is no space. It's all a part of the scenery of the physical realm. And I can see things and tell people what's there and tell people what it feels like. And all of this showed me that there's much more to reality than what we see around us. And then I started to realize that if that's true, we must live on after body dies, because there is no death in the physical realm that affects the mind. The mind is always going there. Our mind is always alive. And so then that's when I started exploring the afterlife communications. And after that, then I started teaching people, and I've dedicated my life to that.
So when you're remote viewing, say for instance, and you're leaving your body, I assume, and leaving the room that you're in to go see what's going on someplace else, how do you know? Do you have a map? How do you get there? How do you know where you're going to light up?
Well, you don't actually go anywhere. So when we remote view, what you're doing is you're shutting down the physical realm, and the physical realm tells you that there's space. That to get from one city to another, you've got to take a car, or you've got to walk, and so that's the space that's in the physical realm. But when you shut your mind down, then you realize that there really is no space, that's all part of the scenery of the physical realm. And as a result of that, then you can look at something which is very far away. You can examine things. We have one remote viewer who remote viewed Jupiter. and looked at Jupiter, and he saw rings around Jupiter. And of course, we know that Saturn has rings, but what about Jupiter? And it turned out then they had a flyby a couple of years later with one of the Voyagers, and it turned out that sure enough, Jupiter had rings. And so he was able to see Jupiter, and it's only because of the fact that in the physical realm, we seem to see space, but in the greater reality, there is no space.
I understand there's no time either.
There's no time.
Okay, that being the case, maybe you know where you're going to be viewing, but how do you know when?
Well, then you just decide, because the fact that the universe is doing what you want to do. So we have great control, and people don't realize that it's true. But this universe is made for us. So we have great control. And so we can say that I can sit down and say, I'd like to look at something. I did one remote view in which I was looking at picture. I didn't know what the picture was. That I just had the coordinates, and so I had letters like an A, B, D, G, F, and that was enough to cue me into the fact that there was a picture there. So when I looked at the picture, I was amazed to see that I heard horses, and I heard the neighing of the horses and horses clopping, and I smelled campfires, and I saw what looked like armor, and but it wasn't armor, it was leather. And so when I looked at the picture, when they sent the picture to me to show me what it is that it was, it turned out it was an Anglo-Saxon burial with the Anglo-Saxon warrior buried with his horse. And so I was taken in time back to when he was alive. I saw the campfires. I heard the horses. I saw the armor. And so then our universal intelligence takes us wherever our mind wants to go. We have great power and just don't realize what it is. But so we can remote view something in any time, any place in the world that has ever been or will ever be.
So if we take that, then we've got a heck of a tool on our hands, don't we? You can go into past lives, I take it?
Yeah, you can go anywhere. So what happens when we talk about a past life, we're really talking about an other life. So when we go into a past life regression, what we're doing is we're seeing another life that's part of the higher self. That other life then was fully lived, and the person then is in the afterlife now, and we are viewing that person's life because they're intertwined with our lives. So we can view what happened in their life. And as a result of that, then we can tell them things that they didn't, we shouldn't have known. And we can, but for us to say, well, that was my life, that's a little bit of a stretch. So we shouldn't say that was my life. We should say that's another life.
Can we go the other direction with it? Another life in the future?
People are able to predict the future using remote viewing. The Joe McMoneagle, who is one of the foremost remote viewers, has looked into the future 6,000 years into the future and has come up with what he sees there. So it is possible to remote view the future.
And of course, that brings up a rabbit hole we probably shouldn't go down. And that would be, okay, so is the future predestined or is it subjective?
So the future is always changing. So we live in what Einstein's teacher, Hermann Minkowski, said was a block universe. And what he meant by that was that the past and the future are all in one block. And you can go anywhere in that block and you can look to see the past or you can look to see the future because that's space-time. Space-time is one unity. And when we then go into the future in that block, then we can look and see what it's going to be, but it may change by the time we get there. So in other words, the block is not static. It's not predestined. The block is continually changing based upon what we're doing today and what we see. Then that future that we see now may be a different future by the time we get there.
Just seeing it might have changed it for us, right? Because we changed our intention, right?
Yeah.
So let's take all this to the afterlife, okay? So say you're a person like you are right now, and you're in this reality, and you want to visit someone in the afterlife. How's that done?
So all you have to do, realize that they are not away someplace. They're not far away. There's no separation in space. That all you have to do is to relax your mind, meditate, go into a relaxed state, and then have a dialogue with them. And it's just a matter of saying something to them. And the first notion of a response is their response to it. Yeah, they are available. Everyone is available. The person does not reincarnate and is not available. They are anxious to communicate with us. They want to continue that relationship with us. All we have to do is relax into going into a dialogue. And when we're in a relaxed state, say, George, how are you doing today? And then we'll wait for George to respond. He will respond immediately after that, immediately after we've said the words. So the
So
first thing that
Craig,
comes to
do
your
you?
mind.
I'm sorry. Do you hear it in your mind's ear, or do you actually like feel like you've heard it?
Yeah, it's telepathy. So you don't really hear the words, but the words come to you because of the fact that we communicate in words. So even when we're corresponding with each other telepathically, we convert that into words so quickly that some people will say, well, I heard a word or something like that. But most people, when they're communicating with their loved ones living in the afterlife, will say, I didn't hear any words, but I knew what he was saying. I knew what the message was that I was getting. And so then it takes a while to get used to that because it comes very quickly. So after we say something to them, then immediately they download the whole message to us.
Sounds
And,
like it's faster moving where
it's
they're at.
faster than any device that we have. It's faster than the speed of light.
Wow.
It comes to us immediately. The whole message comes to us, and then we can respond to it. But if people wait, if they sit and wait, for it to come, or what's the message, and then they missed it. It's gone,
They'll be
and
waiting a long time,
they'll
right?
be waiting a long time because it's not going to come through. What they have to do is the message will come through immediately to them.
So it sounds like each practitioner, though, has a little bit different style based on however they're wired. So is there a difference in how you perceive this? Like some will hear the words, some will get the knowing, some will get a physical feeling?
Yes, everybody has a style. And so anybody who connects with the afterlife then will do it in their accustomed way of doing it. So one person may get more words and may get more understandings that are in words, and another person may just get the whole message all at once. Some people will be able to see their loved ones who have come into the earth plane. So some mediums are actually able to see them there. And so that you'll hear a medium who's doing a reading, and they'll be talking to people, and they'll say, "Oh, I see a woman who's standing behind you back there, and she is an older woman, and she's showing us what she was like when she was alive, and she's an older woman with a bun head and hair, and she's wearing an apron, and so then they do get those, but it depends on the medium. Not all mediums get visions. Not all mediums get images. So what we get is we get the download of the telepathic message. So everybody gets that. So we know that's true. And then some people have that special ability to get some words or some images of the person and are behind a person. So it depends on the medium style.
Okay. Well, Craig, we're going to have to take a short station break, but Craig and I will return very shortly. So don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org, and we're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. If death isn't the end, what is it? With us this hour discussing the other side is Afterlife and Afterlife communication expert R. Craig Hogan. His website, seekreality.com. Craig, we were having a good time just talking about working on the other side and how different people will approach it. Um, let's talk a little bit about what is it like over there. You say the afterlife, we have solid bodies that are as real as the ones we have here. So how is that? What's that look like?
Yeah, it's just a different focus. So what it is like is if you're standing and looking at a waterfall, then you turn around and you look and you see the forest. All you're doing is changing focus. You haven't moved, you're still in the same place, just changed focus. So what happens then when we go into the life after this life? We're just changing focus to another realm. That realm is very much like the earth realm. It's exactly the same, except that it's much better. It has more wonderful things, and it doesn't have any drawbacks. There are no ticks. There are no diseases. There are no old people in the life after this life. And as a result of that, then we live full lives there that are full of all of the things that we enjoy in this life. People will ride in cars, or if they really liked cars, or they'll ride in motorcycles or in airplanes, and so they do the same kinds of things that do on this side of life. But there's so much more that's engaged in it. There is so much more that's involved in the life after this life. And so we would recognize it immediately. Some people, when they cross over into the next life, they think they're dreaming. They can't understand what happened. It's like they wake up someplace and it looks exactly like the Earth life, but it is a different realm. And then they soon discover their loved ones come around. They will greet them, and other people, helpers, will greet them. And so then they realize the fact that they have gone on to another place, and this other place is very much like the Earth.
Is there an expiration date like there is here?
There is no expiration date. The life that we enter in the next life then is just one stage. And so then we will continue from that stage on to the next life. And we don't know what that's like. We can't even envision what the next life would be because we are engaged in this life and we understand when we go into the next life what will be happening there. But after that, the horizon is vast and it's very long, and we will continue going from one horizon to the next.
As we do these transitions, do the conditions around us change, or is it kind of like a rerun?
Yeah, the conditions around us change. So we are going to be going into a new realm. It's called Summerland. The people on Earth who go into the next realm go to a place called Level 3 or Summerland. And in Summerland, then we know what that's like. And we have descriptions of it, vivid descriptions of it from people living there. And so we know what that's like. And then we will go from there into the next level when we're ready to go. We can stay with our loved ones for as long as we want. One man in a book called Life in the World Unseen by Anthony Borgia said that he had been there for 1,000 years in this Summerland. And he just didn't want to go on. He didn't want to go to the next step. And so he can stay there as long as he wants to. And we can choose to do that. And we can stay with our families as long as we feel like it.
So there's basically no time and we don't age, but we
Yeah,
can choose to evolve.
Yeah, there's no time. We don't age. There is a sequence. So, in other words, we continue to go through sequences and gain memories that we say are what I remember from when I did this in the past. And so there is that kind of a time sense. But there is no sun. There is no year. There is no change of seasons. And so we don't have those kinds of things. People don't celebrate birthdays, but they will come into the earth plane to celebrate with us. So if we're celebrating somebody's birthday or somebody's wedding, they will be there among us during that period of time, but they don't celebrate those on the other side. So there is the sequence, and there are memories that we have that we say are in the past, and we don't know what we're going to be doing tomorrow, so that'll be in the future. So that kind of time exists, but there is no such time as the seasons and the days and the nights and those sorts of things.
I love the way you said that the ancestors, if you will, or the ones that have crossed, the elders, can come back into this time and celebrate with us. I know in the Celtic traditions, in the Native American traditions, in the Aboriginal traditions, there's all these different um, celebrations or rituals that they do to commune with the elders, the ones that have crossed. Is that what happens then? Is they make that space for the communication to happen, and they're more receptive to it?
Yes, many cultures have had that ability and we've lost it. So that many, especially the Eastern cultures, have that ability. And they do communicate with the ancestors, and the ancestors do communicate back to them so that they do understand things from them. And we've lost that in the Western world. We have completely lost it. We were told by the church that there were no such things as people living in the afterlife, and it's demonic, and you shouldn't do that. And so that primitive religion then doesn't have the hold that it did before. And then we were told by science that it's all nonsense, that this isn't true, that we will live this life and then kick off and there will be nothing after that. And so people believe that for a period of time. And they were both primitive superstitions. Now we're coming to the first realization, the first in humankind's history of what life is like, what happens at the end of this life, what happens when we go into the next life. And these then are then enlightening people. We're beginning to understand what life is like. And so then this is making changes in people's lives. They just have to realize the truth.
The truth is, will set you free for sure, huh?
Yeah.
So you were talking. Let's go back a little bit. You were talking about the different levels. Okay, so I'm here, and tomorrow I decide, well, this old body's done. Okay, and so I transition. And the first place I go is the one we just described. And then you said after that, when somebody's ready, they can evolve to the next level. When they evolve to the next level, do they lose access to this realm? Um, and does how much of things change when they move there?
Yeah, when they go on to the next level, it is not an abrupt change. It's not like graduating from school and then one day you're in school and the next day you're graduated. It is more like the gradual transitions that we go from infancy into childhood, from childhood into adolescence, adolescence into adulthood, and so forth. So it's a gradual transition, but we can look at these as levels in the same way that we can as infants, children, adolescents, and adults.
But it's really
And
more of
so
a nuance then.
yeah, they're gradual changes that happen. We can stay at any level as long as we want. Now, when people go to the next level, to the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh levels, then there is much less reliance upon things of the earth. So there is no need for then, after a period of time, for bodies. And so we can't even imagine what that's like. That's so far beyond us right now that we don't need to worry about it. We don't need to be concerned about it. It's going to happen, and we will be there when it happens. So we then will make that change, and we decide when it is that we want to grow. We will stay with our families as long as we want to. Now, what happens then is when somebody does grow on from the third to the fourth level or something, of the fourth to the fifth, they can come back down. So we can come back down to the earth plane. That's at a lower level. And we can't go up. If we're on the third level, we can't go to the fourth. It's only because of the fact that our minds can't comprehend it. Our minds can't make sense of it. So
So
it
it's an
isn't like it's a
evolutionary
boundary.
process,
It's an
right?
evolutionary process, right?
Right.
So we
So
can
we
go
have to go
down.
we have to go through these changes, probably shift our frequency in the process in order to be able to transcend to the next level.
Yeah, that's what happens. So a person who is at that higher level, one of those fourth, fifth levels, something like that, then they can still come down to the earth plane.
Hmm.
So in other words, they can come down to any of the planes that are below, but we can't go up to the planes that are above us. So what they can do is, even if they're at the fourth or fifth level, they can still come through for the wedding or for the birthday. But by that time, when they get to that level, most of the people are already over there with them. So it doesn't make any difference. But they can come down if they want to.
So is that where the concept of ascended masters and that sort of thing comes from?
Yeah, all of these things that are intuitive understandings of what we have, that there are celestial levels, there are ascended masters, and so we know that Jesus, for instance, communicates clearly through the great chain of being. The great chain of being is when a person at a higher level communicates to a person at a lower level, and they communicate to the person at their next lower level, and so there's a great chain of being. And so Jesus and Gautama, the Buddha, Longse are all at a different level. They're at a higher level now. But they are teaching. They are engaged in teaching us on the earth plane, but through the great chain of being.
So it's like those little things that you plug into your wall that will shift the voltage to something that your computer can tolerate versus plugging directly in. These guys are transducing the information through different beings.
Yes, what they're doing is they're communicating it through different beings. Now, they still will come down. So we hear about them coming down for special occasions, and there are gatherings of people. We have heard about gatherings of people in which people would come through. Martin Luther would come through and speak to a gathering, or and occasionally then a higher level being, such as Jesus, would come into that gathering and would speak. So we've heard about from the people living in the life after this life about these actual occurrences having when they have presentations that are done by these higher level masters.
I have heard of that where, they'll be having a meeting or worship, and all of a sudden somebody's sitting in the room that has already been on the other side. So that would be very eerie to experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, but it happens. We are continually in touch with the people living in the life after this life. They're continually with us, and they know what we're doing. They are available. They're only a thought away. They hear us. They understand our thoughts, our feelings, and so then they are continually in contact with us, and they will come to us when we ask them to.
Sounds like it can actually be a closer relationship than when they were alive.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that people come who have gone through the guided afterlife connections training. They've learned how to have their own afterlife communications. They say to us, well, I have a more wonderful relationship than I ever had when he was alive. We were fighting all the time. We had all this baggage that we had, but now it's gone, and now I have this wonderful relationship. We communicate every day.
That's such a blessing. I mean, I know as people age, that can happen as well. Where they didn't had a problematic relationship with their mother when they were younger, but it can develop as the person starts to get closer to the gate.
Yeah, that's what happens. People mature, and the maturity is always in the direction of having more love and compassion. In other words, the people don't mature backwards. They don't mature into being cruel and deceptive. They will mature into being loving. So then the longer we live, the more we mature. And then when we get into the life after this life, then that maturation continues.
And the longer we're there, the more we continue to mature. That's
It,
amazing.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a wonderful time. No one, this is what they tell us from the life after this life, when they communicate back to us, and we have hundreds of thousands of these communications now that we never had before, and they tell us there is no need to fear the transition at the end of this life. It is a natural, normal transition. People who have gone through it say there was no pain involved in it. There was nothing that happened that made me fearful.
Well, it's time for us to take another station break. Craig and I will be right back to continue our discussion, so please stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around.
How many times do we die anyway? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're speaking with the author of 8 books about the afterlife and afterlife communication, R. Craig Hogan. His website, seekreality.com. Craig, you were talking about how we die, we leave this lifetime, we go through a transition that's kind of like turning from looking at one scene to another. But then when we get ready from the afterlife, we can then die again, if you will, or transition again. Does the transition change from time to time? Is the one from this life to death can be pretty traumatic, I know, for people. Does it get easier?
Yeah, the transition from this life into the next life is very different from the other transitions that we'll go through. And the reason for that is when we came into this life, we had a physical body. And we have a body experience. And we're using the body as an avatar in this life to be able to accomplish goals, to grow in love and compassion. So that body then is unique for us because we have the feeling like, as we're in this life, like the body is something which we live in, and then once we stop living in it, it has to go away somehow. And so we say it dies. and then it just goes into dust. But that's a very different circumstance from the next levels. In the next levels, we don't have to feel like there's something that has to happen to the body. We simply make a transition from one status to another. And so when we go from the body into an ethereal body, and then we go into having no body at all, that there's no reason to have a body. These are changes that happen gradually, the same way as from going from infancy into childhood. And that change then is something which is very easy. It's a transition we go through. We don't have to have the death of the body only once at the end of this life. And then from there on, we will have transitions that are easy transitions in from one level to the next.
That sounds a lot more inviting. So, Craig, it sounds like you've compiled quite the wealth of information about the other side. How do you get that information?
The information, all of the information comes from communications from people living in the afterlife. We now have just hundreds of thousands of these communications. We have them through trance mediums and physical mediums, materialization mediums and mental mediums and meditation and automatic writing and a great number of methods that were being used today to communicate with people living in life after this life. This is the first time in history that we've had all these methods and we've gotten all these communications. And so now we're realizing things that we could not have realized before. We didn't have these. The next revolution that we're going to be going through is going to be a revolution in which consciousness becomes foremost in our understanding of this life and the life after this life. But we're still decades away from that happening in the general public and now, and especially in some of the scientific circles. They have not matured to the fact that they realize that we live on after the body dies and that this is one life and next time then we will go through another life. And that is something which will come in the next few decades.
So, evolution in this reality to a deeper understanding of the next?
Yes. So what we do is we are gaining maturation. We're gaining in our understanding of the life after this life. We had, while we're in Earth School, while we're doing this, we had to be in a state of mind in which we didn't understand all of this. We are in a crucible. We're in the hard times. This is boot camp. And we needed to be in this state without understanding that life after this life so clearly as we will once we leave here. This is what they call this is the nursery. This is where we gain our personality. We go through the struggles. We overcome. We learn to love. And all of these things that happen in this stage are in preparation for the next when we go on to the next life. So we will have the death of the body here. We won't have the death of the body again, ever again.
Well, you just explained why sometimes I feel like I'm dealing with preschoolers all the time.
Yeah, and that way, we have YouTubes. We are doing quite a few YouTubes because that helps people to understand. And the comments that you get on the YouTubes from people about this are just amazing. Some people say, this is wonderful. I'm so happy that I watched this. And other people say, this is a load of crap. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
You just get the whole gamut because we're in the crucible. We're in a time now where there are very, very cruel people. There are wars. At the same time, there are very loving and compassionate people. And there are people who are engaging in activities that are going to help us become peaceful. All of this is happening in this crucible at this time. And it's necessary for all of these things to happen for us to be able to grow and come into where we will be at the end of this life, more full of love and compassion, and then that will continue in the next life.
It would appear that on this reality, in this level, things are moving quicker and changing more rapidly. And like you said, everything's falling apart to get rid of the flotsam and reforming in a different way. What's causing this opportunity at this time, this crucible?
It's because of the fact that the people on the other side who are working with us are engaged in trying to help us to understand, and we're becoming open to that. So the openness to it and their ability to get through to us and help us is making a change now. It's a sea change. We expect this to be a dramatic paradigm shift that's going to be happening in the next few decades. And it's because all of the factors are together. All of the heroes are in place, as Redfield said. And so we have all of the people who understand this. They are teaching people now. We're making discoveries about how to communicate with the afterlife so that we get messages coming back. And All these things are happening right now. It's an exciting time to be alive. And so we are part of that. You and I and Rob, we are all part of making this happen. All we have to do is allow the people in the life after this life to come through, engage us, help us along the way, and we will help to change humankind.
That's amazing. Do you feel that um, we have, as we have afterlife communication with people on the other side, we're almost kind of like building an energetic pathway for others to follow to do the same?
What we're doing is we are strengthening the ties, as you say. So as we have afterlife communications with the other side, that changes humankind by that small amount. So everyone who learns how to have these afterlife communications and engages in them, that strengthens the channel between us and the life after this life. So we are seeing a change that then eventually will come into the point where there'll be a flow of communication between our realms, and that flow then is going to be evident to everybody. And that then is going to make the big changes that will happen in our lifetime.
So we've been talking about this evolution that we're going through, but nature hates a vacuum. Does something backfill where we've been?
What we're doing is we're understanding things for the first time. So what we will do is we will have to make changes in what we believe and who we are and how we treat other people. And so that there will be a dramatic change that we will leave behind the old world. We'll look back at the old world as being primitive. And we are actually in a spiritually backward time right now. We're just emerging from that. And so we'll look back on this and we'll wonder, how in the world could people have believed those things? Why didn't they understand the truth? Why didn't they understand what's evident? And so we will look back on it as being a time of ignorance. There has been someone who came through from the other side described this as the fear ages. So we're living in the fear ages. Everything is marked by fear. We're fearful of wars and of violence and all of the things that are happening in our realm, and that will be overcome. We will lose that, and then when we come into that, we will come into a world full of peace, but it's decades away.
Well, I look forward to that day. Now, you keep talking about when we're talking about the information you're gathering and everything else. Do you have a team of psychics, if you will, or of mediums that you're gathering information from?
Yeah, we have. There are a great number of people now who are engaged in this work, and we do keep close communications with each other, and we share what we learn, and we are attempting to help humankind to make a change. So we see this as a movement. It really is a movement that we are helping people to understand what we have never known humankind simply is ignorant about. And so then we are continually in correspondence. Now, I work most closely with Roberta Grimes. Roberta Grimes is
Oh, Roberta
an
is such a
attorney.
doll. Yes.
Yeah.
Had her on the show numerous times.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and she's an attorney. She then has discovered these things, and so now she and I have seekreality.com online together, and so we are working together to help people to understand. And she also has her website, Teachings by Jesus, and what she does is she teaches the fact that this great master Jesus, who is making a difference in people's lives, has many more things to say, continues to correspond with us, and continues to teach. He never was a god. He's just a man, just exactly like we are, except that he was chosen. And so then he is having an impact upon humankind, and his impact is going to grow rather than dissipate, even though the churches are going to go away because they are trying to make Jesus into a god, and he was not a god.
Right. So when you get this information from your various team members, do you then triangulate the information to fact check, if you will?
Yes, we're very concerned about that. We want to make sure that what we receive is corroborated. So we want to receive it from people living in the life after this life, not a guru, not a religion, not anybody using their intuition. We are receiving messages from the afterlife. And then we want to have it corroborated. We want to have more than one source, and we compare sources, and we make sure that what we're teaching then comes from a number of different sources and is validated. And there's some areas that are still not fully understood. We get mixed messages about them, and we say that. We say we don't quite understand this. we're getting a mixed message about it, but seems to be what it is that we're getting from the various sources. So
Does
we
the
always, yeah, go ahead.
do the mixed messages come from our inability to understand higher level concepts?
That's what it is. And what they're doing is they're communicating to us in any way that they can. So we're getting it at our level, but we may not understand what that means. One of the foremost areas is in reincarnation. We have two very different signals from the life after this life. And one of them is that we do not reincarnate as individuals. What happens is that there are other individuals in our higher self, and they incarnate, and their lives may be taken from a framework of our lives. And so there was something that we didn't learn that they want to learn in that new life, and so then our lives are intertwined with theirs. And that means that when we have a past life regression, what we're doing is really looking at this other person's life that's intertwined with us. It isn't that we as an individual come back onto the earth plane. But then at the same time, we also have messages from people saying that they have lived 1,000 lives and the afterlife and in the other lives that they've lived. And so we get mixed messages, and we are not fully understanding that, but we're getting the idea that we stay as individuals. We know that that's true. Heaven does not empty out with people reincarnating and coming back, and our loved ones are available to us. We can communicate with them anytime we want. So we know that we stay individuals, and somehow that then will be meshed with the fact that people do come into this life that we're intertwined with, and we're just beginning to understand that.
Well, it is another time to take another station break, but we're going to continue with this discussion on the other side. Please stay with us as Craig and I continue to explore death, dying, and beyond. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org.
I know it's not my fault. 3 o'clock in the morning, and it looks like it's gonna be another sleepless night. I've been listening to your dreams and getting very low, wondering what I can do. Maybe I'm being foolish, 'cause I haven't heard you mention anybody's name at all. How I wish I could be sure it's me that turns you on. Each time you close your eyes, I've heard it said that dreamers never lie. You've been talking in your sleep, sleeping in your dreams.
Can E.T. phone home? We're continuing our discussion with R. Craig Hogan. His website, seekreality.com. Craig, let's change gears a little bit. If we die and leave these bodies, we're basically leaving the physical Earth behind, as I'm understanding you. If so, where do the other planets and other star systems come into this? Can we communicate there as well?
Yeah, what they say to us is that there are millions of other spheres that people are living on. And some of these spheres are in a planet's atmosphere. So it's rather like on Earth, there may be other dimensions. There may be 2 or 3 or 4 other dimensions, and there are people living on those dimensions. So they tell us that each one of the planets has these other dimensions. And so then we can communicate with those people who are living in the other dimensions, but they are going to be oriented towards the Earth plane. We communicate with people who've gone from the Earth plane into another dimension. And so what we know about them is that there are millions of these planes and spheres, that the other planets have other dimensions on them. We have communicated with the Arcturians and the Palladians and others who have come down to the Earth plane. We have a physical mediumship circle in which we sit around a table and we raise our vibration, and things happen in the room. We actually have things happen. For instance, there are voices, and there are knocks and rocks and taps, and our table moves across the room. So we have had 3 Arcturians who are part of that circle. So they come into our life here on Earth. They come into our vibration, and they communicate with us, and they tell us what they're doing, and they tell us about what they've called the Federation. There are 57 of these beings, entities that are in this Federation, and they are helping humankind to grow. And so their work then it's like they have decided they're going to have a mission, and their mission is to help humankind. And so they keep coming into the Earth's atmosphere and communicating with us. So all of these manifestations that we have today, the UAPs and the other vehicles that we know are coming in, are all the precursors to what eventually will be a contact in which we're able to communicate with them clearly.
But is this communication going to be like it is with communicating with somebody from the other side, a non-physical event?
Yeah, what it is they are communicating telepathically. And we know that there's a woman in Canada whose name is Dorothy Izat. And she had these UAPs or UFOs that were coming to her, that she saw them outside. And they eventually then began to communicate telepathically with her. And they said, we are spiritual beings. We are just the same as humankind. We are communicating with you, and eventually then we are going to be making contact. And so then what they're doing is they will communicate with us telepathically. And it's just a matter of time before we have these clear telepathic messages from the people living in these other planets and these other dimensions.
Well, there's the good, bad, and the ugly here on our planet. How do we know we're not dealing with the bad or the ugly coming from some other planet?
Yeah, it's by their activities you'll know whether they're good or not. These people who are coming to us, who've communicated with us, are intent upon helping humankind grow. We also know that there are entities that are intent upon holding humankind back. And they are thought forces. They are made of thought, and they come from the cruelty and violence and the animosity that's present in the earth plane today. And so
So
we know.
is there a resonance set up with that?
Yeah, and what they're doing is they then will come into the earth plane and they will interfere with our work. We've had them interfere with our instrumental transcommunication. Instrumental transcommunication means that we record the voices of people living in the afterlife. They come through to us, and we've been very successful at doing that. And then for a period of time, though, our communications were blocked. We learned that it was because there were entities that were between us and the station from which the communications were coming, and they were intent upon blocking. And because of the fact that if humankind grew and became loving and compassionate, there are thought forms that are violent, and they would disappear. In other words, they had a survival instinct. And so we know that that's true. There are evil entities who are intent upon holding humankind back, but there are wonderful entities who are helping us, who are instrumental in helping us to discover things and learn and grow. And so we know that they're engaged in helping us.
It's fun how all this kind of reflects back to a lot of the scriptures and the attempts there to describe this very thing, isn't it?
Yeah, what we have when we have the canon, the New Testament canon or the Christian canon, there are inspired people who wrote those books, and they wrote things that were very important for us to understand. They wrote about Jesus' teachings, and we need to have those. We need to realize that they're true, and that we need to have them in our lives today. So we're just beginning to understand this fully, and using the New Testament canon to help humankind to grow. And so that's what teachingsbyjesus.com is for. That's why Roberta started that website. And so we know that the truth is there. What we do is we want to give it to people without the trappings of the church, the idea of the atonement and the idea that Jesus is a God and that he's somehow greater than humankind and all these things. We take those away, and we have these wonderful, enlightening, uplifting teachings from Jesus that are in the four Gospels.
Well, Craig, it's about that time in the show, and I get to ask you, what's your mission?
My mission is to help people, all the people whom we communicate with, to realize that there is no death and there are no dead. We will come to the end of this life, but we'll continue into the next life. And that means we should live our lives differently here. filled with love and compassion for all the people around us. They're companions in our journey, and we will stay with them. We will never leave our families. We will never leave our pets. We will always be with them once we make the transition into the next life.
Do you see where, as we're starting to evolve here on the planet, and you were talking about the next several decades, there will be, we won't be alone. We won't be separate from the people that have crossed to the other side.
Yes, we're not separate from them now. It's just that we think we are.
Yeah, we don't
So
have contact,
we
right?
haven't, yeah, we haven't been reared as children to realize we can communicate. So when we are reared as children, when people are from childhood learn that they can communicate with their loved ones living in the life after this life, it's going to become commonplace. It'll become easier because we will have grown up with it. Our families will have grown up with it. People will be sitting around the dining room table and they're talking with each other and suddenly somebody says, "Oh, Grandma's here," and everybody will say, "Hi, Grandma." And how have you been? And they'll talk to her because it's a commonplace. That will come. That will happen. And when that happens, then communication will be easy. Everybody will be a medium, is what it amounts to.
Well, it occurs to me that children come wired that way, and then we shame them out of it.
Yeah, the children, when children describe having imaginary friends,
Mm-hmm.
those imaginary friends very often are not imaginary at all. And a child will say, I just talked to Grandpa. Grandpa was in the other room with me, and Grandpa's been dead for 10 years. And the children are much more open to it, but we shut that down. Our society shuts it down. We tell them this is nonsense. Don't believe that. It's not true. And so we shut it down. And as a result of that, it stunts our growth. If we allowed that to prosper, if we allowed that to blossom, everyone would be able to communicate clearly with their loved ones living in their life after this life.
So, on another topic here, we're going to need some of your advice. Um, when a person's out there looking for a medium or a psychic, there's an awful lot of garbage out there. People that exploit people, even if they don't think that that's what they're doing. They aren't trained. Their information isn't necessarily reliable. How can a person tell or find a well-trained psychic or medium versus one that just kind of hung out their shingle because they thought they were good?
Yeah, what not to do is to go to the Yellow Pages and look up for mediums because you're going to run into people who either think that they are mediums and are really not, or people who are just outright charlatans.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lists of certified mediums. We have lists of people, and they are on our website at afterlifeinstitute.org. And I'd recommend that people go to the lists of mediums that are certified, and you'll see the comments about them. You'll see what they are telling people. And the other thing is, though, each one of us is individually, when we go to a medium, we must go to an evidential medium. An evidential medium will tell us specific details about that person in the life after this life. And those details then are going to be things that nobody could guess. And in one, there was one with John Edward that was part of a research project. And a woman came in, and John said, "Well, I have somebody coming through now, and they're describing to me two poodles, one black and one white, and they went through a wedding reception and interrupted it and tore up all of the food on the tables." That was true. That is exactly what happened. The person verified that that was true. That's the kind of evidence that we expect. If you're not getting that kind of evidence, walk away because they're not a qualified medium.
You spoke of certification. What does it take to be a certified medium? Who certifies them?
Some of them, it depends on the rigor. Some of them are more rigorous than others. The Windbridge Institute, which is the primary research institute in afterlife and afterlife communication, has certified mediums, and they take them through a long process of certification, and they have to do readings and show that they were accurate, and they have to go through interviews, and so they are very rigorously evaluated. And at the end of it all, then they say, yes, this person is a valid medium. And so then the certification process requires that they are going to go through several readings in which they demonstrate their ability. And when they demonstrate their ability, then they can be called certified. But we need to go to certified mediums because the others are charlatans.
Not all of them, but certainly you don't know what you're getting, right?
No, that's right.
Yeah. And there are a lot of really gifted people, but if they don't train their gift, they can't be reliable, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, it is a process of growth. So they are going to be exercising that muscle. So they will go through a period of time, and it will be decades to become a qualified medium. They'll become better and better as they go through the process. But when they first start off, they may be kind of mediocre, but then they become more attuned to it, and they understand and they receive the messages better. So a person who is an experienced medium who's been doing it for 20 years and is certified then is a person that you would want to go to.
Well, Craig, thank you for being on the show. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Our guest this hour has been R. Craig Hogan, the president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute and author of 8 books about the afterlife and afterlife communication. To find out more about Craig and all he has to offer, visit his website, seekreality.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes of all of our radio and TV shows, visit www.missionevolution.org.